Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Saturday. Very important program. We have our friend General Jack Keane and our friend Senator Tom Cotton. But first, what the National Association of Black Journalists did, particularly the ABC News moderator, so-called, was disgusting. We all watched it. She was baiting Trump. Trump was set up, and she's no reporter. You don't make accusation after accusation after accusation as if you're using the Kamala Harris talking points or the Democrat Party talking points and then ask President Trump, when did you stop beating your wife? I mean, it's just appalling. If Joe Biden had been sitting in that chair and he had his wits about him, say 10, 20 years ago, I don't think that organization, I don't think that ABC News moderator would have grilled him on his real racist and segregationist history. I don't think they would have given the list of the racist things that he has said throughout his life. I don't think they would have mentioned his association with the 6 Southern racist segregationists, all of whom filibustered the 1964 Civil Rights Act. They would never have done that to him. Nor do I think if Kamala Harris was sitting there, they would have said to her, this is Joe Biden's record when he first came into the Senate. How could you be his running mate after during the debate, you challenged him on his opposition to integrating public schools through busing? And so this is how the media in America work. This is how ABC News work. This is how they all work. That is, a lie becomes the truth and the truth becomes a lie. It's called propaganda. It's called propaganda. Let me give you some examples. Why didn't the ABC News host start a questioning by mentioning the First Step Act under Donald Trump? 90% of those who had their sentences reduced under the First Step Act were black. How come she didn't mention that he supported and instituted an act that shortened mandatory minimum sentences for nonviolent drug crimes? Most of those individuals who were in jail were black. The law allows offenders sentenced under racially motivated mandatory minimums to petition for reevaluation. How come she didn't mention that? President Trump launched the Ready to Work initiative, which helps released prisoners gain meaningful employment. Not all, but a significant, if not majority of our prisoners are minority, and the majority of them are black. How come she didn't mention that President Trump designated 8,760 opportunity zones that are projected to spur $100 billion in private investment in minority communities? How come she didn't mention the Trump administration established a fund to deploy $1 billion in capital funding from minority-owned businesses for the Commerce Department? This is my own research. How come she didn't mention that President Trump's last budget, his 2020 budget, called for $500 million in federal funding for school choice, which Kamala Harris opposes and Biden opposes? And in 2018, he signed legislation increasing school choice funding by $42 million. She didn't mention any of that. How come she didn't mention the Trump administration provided more than $500 million in loans to HBCUs? These are black colleges, historically black colleges, through the capital financing program, made their funding permanent. That was never done. Obama never did any of this. Kamala Harris never supported any of this. Trump worked with these colleges to protect $80 million in Title III carryover funding, and the list goes on and on and on. She didn't mention that because she wasn't there as a news person. She was there as a propagandist. Democracy and Totalitarianism. Politics and the English Language by George Orwell. The Marxist Philosophy of Language, written by a Marxist, How to Change the Language. The Psychology of Totalitarianism. The Origins of Totalitarianism. Why am I talking about this? Because you're living it. And it begins with free speech, honest information, not thought control and language control. And probably the most nefarious and yet ubiquitous book of its kind, a book called Propaganda, written over 100 years ago by Edward Bernays. Now, what does he say? In part, this is all very important. Edward Bernays pioneered the scientific technique of shaping and manipulating public opinion, which he called engineering consent. This is my book now on freedom of the press. Well, what did he say in this book? Among other things, he believed in the power of propaganda, the manipulation and brainwashing of the masses, quote unquote, the minority, that is, the media. the masterminds or the elites, has discovered a powerful help in influencing majorities. It's been found possible so to mold the mind of the masses that they will throw their newly gained strength in the desired direction. In the present structure of society, this practice is inevitable. Whatever of social importance is done today, whether in politics, finance, manufacturing, agriculture, charity, education, and other fields, must be done with the help of propaganda. Propaganda is the executive arm of the invisible government, and it goes on at great length. That book, Propaganda, was a favorite in the Third Reich. That's correct. It was a favorite of Hitler's. Can I say Hitler? No, I can't. Only the Democrats can say Hitler, and only when they dehumanize Donald Trump. But this is a fact. And so we get something like this now. NBC News via Fox News, 1 year ago, June 26, 2023, NBC News reported that Vice President Kamala Harris has the dubious distinction of having the lowest net negative rating of modern vice presidents in the history of their polling. What happened in 1 year's time? According to a new NBC News poll, only 32% of registered voters have a positive view of Harris, compared to 49% with a negative view, including 39% with a very negative view. This leaves Harris with a net negative 17 rating, which NBC News noted is the lowest for any vice president in the poll's history. What happened? Well, the media got rid of Biden after telling us he was the smartest man since Albert Einstein. They needed to install somebody, and they needed to install somebody quickly. The media working with the Democrat Party, there she is on the shelf. Kamala Harris, despite all this, they figure with our propaganda, our lies, our incessant, free, in-kind advertising on behalf of Kamala Harris. Conversely, simultaneously, the dehumanization of Donald Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance, the endless propaganda that goes on, this two-front attack will be able to get Kamala Harris across the finish line. Here we have Selena Zito and Kamala Harris has rolled media cross-border into outright lies, and it goes on and on. The media are lying about Harris, and Harris is lying about Harris. Did Harris lie to us before, or is she lying to us now? Well, she's lying to us both times. And so are the media. It's like synchronized dancing, except here we have synchronized propaganda. For example, headlines, National Review. Why I have changed all my policies. A mocking of Kamala Harris. The Kamala Harris PSYOP. What is she doing? Lying. Here we have the Washington Examiner. Con Carroll, without a primary, Kamala's flip-flops are just lies. They desperately prevented an open primary where other candidates would debate Kamala Harris and she'd be exposed. She's running a Joe Biden campaign right now with the media, the Praetorian Guard, Al Jazeera, Prav the media, protecting her in her bubble. She only goes where she wants to go. Donald Trump is ubiquitous. He even goes in front of extraordinarily hostile audiences with extraordinarily hostile questioners. Kamala Harris won't do it. Why? Because she's a liar. Whether it's Medicare for all, I don't support that now because it would eliminate private health care. Whether it's border czar, no, I was never the border czar. Whatever it is, fracking, no, I'm for fracking now. Oh, I don't believe in confiscating guns, even though you said you did. And the media will continue to push this agenda. But one of the things Kamala Harris does need to press on, among many, is her role as vice president. She has been the most outspoken and consistent Israel hater of any presidential candidate, vice president, or president since the state of Israel was established. She is hostile, openly so, towards the state of Israel. This Biden administration, of which she's vice president, remember, Biden said she's the last one he consults because her opinion is so important. Well, maybe she can explain a few things if she'll ever reveal herself to people who want to question her. Here we have the Free Beacon. Iran raked in $16 billion from illicit oil sales in just 4 months, highlighting Biden-Harris administration's lax sanctions. They're funding Iran. They're funding Hamas. Israel is surrounded. They've literally been attacked in the south, in the north, in the east by the PLO, all funded by Iran, funded by Qatar, and funded by the American taxpayer. Israel is now essentially on its own. Don't hand me this stuff. We give them all the weapons, so forth and so on. What exactly did Kamala Harris say about Iran in the last few days and its role in any of this? Nothing. How about Biden? Nothing. Nothing. And when Kamala Harris gave her disgusting commentary after her meeting with Netanyahu and after she refused to go to the joint session of Congress to hear him speak, you better believe that that gaslit the terrorists. Her actions in boycotting Netanyahu, her preceding comments just trashing Netanyahu and the Israeli military, her propagandizing on behalf of Hamas with their statistics and so forth, it all adds up. They see weakness, and they're funding the enemy. And this is from Adam Credo at Free Beacon. Iran's illicit oil trade, which is heavily sanctioned by the United States and other Western nations, has hit a boom period under the Biden administration, topping around $90 billion as of March. This cash has helped to keep the hardline regime afloat amid economic uncertainty and helps Tehran fund its network of terror proxies, including Hamas and Hezbollah. And it goes on. The United States also has granted several sanctions waivers that permit Iraq to pay Iran upwards of $10 billion in backed electricity payments, billions and billions flowing into Iran. Donald Trump had them flat on their back. They were dying. They weren't committing acts of terrorism. Here we have also from Gatestone Institute, why has the Biden administration donated close to $1 billion in aid to Hamas since the October 7 massacre? And the article is written by a brilliant scholar. So we're funding Hamas, we're funding Iran, we're funding the PLO. What are we doing to Israel? I mentioned this last week, and to my chagrin and disappointment, I'm not aware of a single news platform that has picked this up. Israel arms sales update. This is under Biden-Harris, Harris-Biden. I mean, she's vice president, right? What she thinks as vice president, all you do is go to funerals and go around and talk about abortion? She wants to run as a substantive vice president who did so much. No, she hadn't done a damn thing. And she certainly hasn't spoken up for the people of Israel, let alone the people of the United States, as far as I'm concerned. 120 millimeter tank ammo. Anticipated delivery, 2027. They're slow walking. This has already been approved by Congress. 120 millimeter mortar ammo. 2026 if they're lucky to get it. They have these medium and technical vehicles. Might get them in 2026. This has all been funded, passed by Congress. What else? AMRAAM. What are those? Those are guided missile systems. So you take, for instance, a bomb or a missile and put a guidance system on it. Those are being held too. Critically important F-15s, F-135 engines. For the F-35s, the delivery date of that between 2030 and 34. It's outrageous. JDAM, you can see this conversion system I was talking about, outright. MK-84s, these 2,000-pound bombs that they need to destroy Iran's nuclear program. That's why they're not getting them. Rifles, they're withholding. 338 medium machine guns, Sig Sauers, and of course more JDAMs, that is guided missile systems. So while they're funding Iran, they have their foot on the throat of Israel. Now, part of the problem is Kamala Harris has a national security advisor that, according to the Free Beacon, and reporting what Tom Cotton and Elise Stefanik are launching an investigation, his name's Phil Gordon. He has connections with an individual, a senior Department of Defense official, who was reportedly involved in an Iranian government operation to expand Tehran's soft power in the United States. That occurred under a gentleman who was appointed by Blinken. We have 25 Al-Hiss cases going on in this country, none of which the media give a damn about. Well, this clearly influences Kamala Harris's thinking. What else? Her pastor. Her pastor was accusing America, basically, of inciting 9/11. And also, he joins in with the anti-Semites in South Africa. And Kamala Harris, her pastor, Amos Brown, was among the first that she called when she learned that she would be handed the presidency, or at least the Democrat nomination, as if we were in the Soviet Union. There's a lot about Kamala Harris that we don't know. There's a lot that we do know. And most of all, we know that the American media are so corrupt. They're so ideologically radical. They're so, in many respects, Marxist/fascistic/Islamist in the way that they operate. Oh, Mark, what did you say? Exactly what I said. It is up to the American people to cut through all the static and understand exactly what's going on in this country. They delivered Biden and now they want to deliver a Harris. We cannot afford another one of these media-installed reprobates. That's right, reprobates as president, or this country is going to be in dire straits.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.